This episode is brought to you by Athletic Speed and Movement. At athleticspeedmovement.com, we've taken Dell Basket's 45 years of speed and movement training and put it all in one place just for you. You can get the same training that NFL players have been getting for years, collegiate players have been getting for years, and now high schools across the nation are paying thousands of dollars to bring Dell in to install his system, but we've got it online for you. It's time to help your team become faster, not just in the 40, not just their sprint speed, but between the tackles and their cuts while they're chasing down the quarterback. It's time for you to help them become faster everywhere. Jump over to athleticspeedmovement.com. There's an orange button there. Just click it. It says, get the keys to playing faster. You'll get the 3 core movement video from Dell. He's explaining the science behind it, all for just the price of your email. Check it out, athleticspeedmovement.com. Football made simple. Become great at your craft by finding ways to make it simple for those around you. This is the Coaching 101 podcast hosted by Find a Way Productions with your co-host, Daniel Chamberlain and Kenny Simpson. What's up, coaches? This is the Coaching Podcast. You're here with the greatest Kenny Simpson and Daniel Chamberlain. We are joined tonight by a fellow coach. The guy reached out and wanted to come on the podcast, and we're lucky to have him. Coach, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, man?
I appreciate that, Coach. Yeah, so I'm Zach Baber. I coach football at Central Noble in northeastern Indiana. We're a small school. I think last count we have about 383 kids at the school. So smaller school. So it's kind of funny because every coach you talk to, at least the first time head coaching, it seems like they're always like, oh, it's an unusual path. I think the last guest you had that same thing, but my path, very unusual. My day job, I'm an attorney. That's what I do for my day job. So I actually, every summer, I would kind of Google Google coaching jobs in the area. 2 years ago, something popped up in the area to be an assistant coach. So I called up the coach, and first year was the running backs and linebackers coach at Central Noble, and everybody has a timeline. And the thing about a timeline is it changes every few years because it never goes as planned. So I knew I always wanted to be head coach, but I wanted to be assistant coach for a while, kind of learn everything, and then be head coach 5, 10 years in the future. That didn't happen to me. So opportunity came up, and I jumped on it, and I'm really glad I did. But holy cow, my first year head coaching last year was I learned a lot. And that's
Everyone always says that first one is like, it doesn't matter how prepared you think you are, you're never prepared.
no.
And like I've heard Kenny say it, I've heard Joe say it. Bill Blankenship is a guy that I got to work for this year. He said it, and he said they always get the AD or whatever will call your references and be like, "Do you think they're ready to be a head coach?" And he's basically like, "No, but no one ever is. Like, why is that even a question you ask? No one's ready to be a head coach, right?" So. You just found out what everybody else eventually finds out. So
Mm-hmm.
kudos to you for jumping in the hot seat, though.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, like I said, I'm glad I did it, but definitely at the start of the year, I thought, oh, I'm prepared for like 90% of what may happen. I know there's going to be stuff that I didn't prepare for, but no, I was definitely learning, yeah, mainly as I went. And that's actually what led me to create this program that I created because I want to help people who are kind of in my shoes that first year, kind of help guide them
So
along the way.
go ahead and pitch your program real quick. We'll knock that out, and you can plug it again at the end. So to what program are you talking? What did you create?
So yeah, so the community, it's a program slash community. It's both. So officially it launches, and I don't know, I should have asked you beforehand when this is going to air, but
Week.
Yeah, 1 week.
okay. So it officially launches May 9th, so it'll be launched probably when this airs.
Yeah.
But it's called Coaches Help Coaches, but it's literally a program to help aspiring head coaches, first year head coaches, and just pretty much any coaches struggling to build that, establish their culture they want. And it's aimed to, so there's 3 parts of the program. There's individualized like playbooks to help with logistical side of things, because there's just a lot of things that, you want to focus on the X's and O's, but as head coaches, you can't as much.
Right.
So I want to help head coaches early on be able to focus more on the X's and O's. more on building their relationships with the players because that's where it matters. So that's where these playbooks come and teach them how to handle time management, how to delegate, how to pick the right staff. Um, this the other main ones I hear people are getting community support, uh, using social media, so stuff like that. And then the other thing is creating this community of it's a private community where fellow driven coaches. Twitter's awesome. I love Twitter. Social media done right is awesome. It's how I got connected with you guys because of social media. But there's a lot on social media that you can't control. So
Right.
so part of this program also is a community, and it's a forum based where you have access to other coaches to handle more of the weekly anomalies that come up with head coaching. Then part three is this comprehensive one first year checklist of things. This is what you should be doing at this time, because at least from my perspective and reaching out to many different coaches is one of the most stressful things is stressing out about I don't know what I should be doing. Like I just that's yeah, and I'm trying to take that away for new head coaches.
That's awesome. And Kenny, I know you have a lot to say on that kind of stuff too, right?
Mhm.
Because you sell head coaches. Is it academy? Is it called Head Coach
Yeah,
Academy?
we got the academy and the workbook, but Coach has some good stuff. I'm excited. I think there can't ever be enough stuff to help coaches.
100%.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's something everybody focuses on that at some point. Is like, how do I take that next step? What do I need to be ready for? And like you said, you're never ready for it all. It's when you're dealing with kids and the kids have parents and you've got administration and everyone has an agenda. Like, man, you're never gonna run out of things to be ready for. So,
no, that's for sure.
well, that's awesome, Coach. Well, man, we're super glad you reached out and did social media right as you said it because we're glad to have you on the podcast tonight. Kenny, how's things over in Batesville, man?
Man, it's
Excuse
good.
me, Southside.
Yeah, that's right. The South Side. I know if you're not from this area, it's Batesville area, but it's South Side of the river. So it's gone well. We had graduation. So our first one is walk across stage. She's valedictorian and Miss South Side, so she kind of got all the awards. So set a nice high bar there for her siblings to try to follow. But we're proud of her, and she's going to be going to Harding University in the fall, and so that's not too far from here. That's about 45 minutes. So she'll be away, which will be hard, but she won't be too far. And that's where her mom and I both graduated from. So we're kind of excited to see that go on. So, but we had a lot of family in town, which is awesome. I've got one. I'm one of five. There's five of us, so a lot of them were in town, and then my wife's family was in town also. So really, really neat. It's really fun when you see your kids move on to the next stage, and you see the impact they've left behind them. Like the younger kids that were looking up to her as a mentor. We've got a lot of younger cousins that look up to her, and so it's been neat to see them. But it reminds you how old you're getting and how quick time goes by. So I know you got some young kids at home, Daniel. Coach, I don't know if you
Yes.
have any, but man, it moves pretty quick.
I have two young boys, a 3-year-old and a 4-month old. So, yep.
I'm at 5 years and 2 years. So
Okay.
I'm assuming you picked Harding because they just won the national championship, right? Is that the same team?
Well, they sucked when I was there, so that wasn't it, But
So she's a place kicker. Where does she fit on the roster? She got RPOs, I'm sure,
I'm
right?
sure she could. I think she's going to be a flag football terror, knowing her.
There we go. I'm sure they'll invite her over to be on staff too. You can't let that much football knowledge get into your campus and not pull them up
She's
for
pretty
something.
sharp.
So.
She's pretty sharp.
Well, that's awesome. Well, guys, tonight we're going to talk a little bit of organization within your program, within your team. Like Coach said, it's hard for you to be that first year head coach, and I'm sure it doesn't go away in year 2 through 30, right? I mean, it's always something. You're always having to change your focus and what are your priorities. And I know that you said earlier, time management, people management, priorities management. Those are all things that never stop being an issue. And if you're not organized, they will continue being an issue, right? It's just kind of the name of the game. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Coach Simpson, before we get started, why don't you tell us how to simplify football for ourselves, our staffs, and our players?
Coaching 101 podcast is sponsored by Findaway Productions. Findaway Productions also sponsors fbcoachsimpson.com for all your coaching needs with over 30 coaching materials, books, as well as 50 PowerPoints and videos and smaller materials and the free magazine headsets. Findaway Productions also sponsors offensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things offense, and defensivecoordinatoracademy.com, all things defense.
What's up, coaches? I want to talk to you for just a few moments about your program. You know, the longer I'm in this profession, the more I understand that efficiency is truly the name of the game. You're talking offense, defense, doesn't matter, right? Eventually, you're going to come down to checking out your efficiency. So I have to ask you, are you doing everything in your program the most efficient way, right? Are you fundraising the most efficient way? Are you representing your players and your program to the public in the best way? Are you planning to build the facilities the most efficient way? If you answered no to any of those, or really even if you answered yes to all of them, and you haven't contacted Mark Bridges at Ace Sports, you're missing a key step. So look, Mark and his team, you know, they are the go-to group for video board and scoreboard installations for your school. They're not just football either. Mark can help you mock up your newest video board for your that new stadium, or maybe even your old stadium, right? That's where Mark and the guys come in. And we're not just buying a flashy thing, right? Yes, it's nice. It's pretty neat to have that big scoreboard, that big video board, but you're also, you know, you're investing back into that program. You're investing into that newest fundraiser. Sure, you can keep selling your discount cards, your beef jerky, hosting pie auctions, whatever it is that you like to do. But let's just be honest with ourselves, guys. We're not making enough money for those big ticket items. For the big ticket items like turf, an indoor facility, that's where you need a big ticket item fundraiser. That's what Ace Sports is offering you today. Guys, I've talked to Mark several times now, right? And it always comes down to big school, small school. Right? Well, of course, the big schools can afford that new video board, but the small schools really can't. It's just not true anymore, man. Your school isn't too small, and I promise. Okay, 1A, 2A schools, it doesn't matter. Mark and the guys, they're helping them out. Contact Mark today at mark.bridges@acesports.com and let him come give you a quote. Let him show you and your administration the plan. Now, really, it's the cheat code, right? Let him show you the cheat code that is fundraising with Ace Sports video boards. Tell him Daniel sent you. All right, thank you, Coach. You know, guys, every single time we're going to say the same thing here, and that's go talk to those guys, right? Those people that we really allow to be sponsors for the podcast. It's because we believe in what they're doing, whether it's an item they sell or a program or the fundraising, whatever it is. That's something we truly believe in, have seen be successful, and we don't want to put our name behind something that isn't successful. So holler at Mark or Ryan if you're over in Oklahoma. You know, Zach, those guys, let them help you. Let them help you be successful. We still have the hat, right? Coachescap.com. Is that it?
We do. It's gone well. You know, my little niece was in town, so I sent her home with it. So my brother was thrilled that she has a hat and a whistle attached
Oh,
to
I'm
it.
sure.
She was pulling that the whole time, so they'll have a good time with that. But no, we have the coach's cap with the whistle. We got a few of them left, and so if you're wanting one, again, I'll say it like I've said every week. Well, you don't have to buy my hat, but protect your skin. Right. You know, your coach looks cool in that ball cap he's got out there, but if I wore out there, that's what I used to wear, and man, I got roasted and cooked. So those bucket hats, there's a reason people wear them. It's definitely not for looks. You know, it's a practical purpose. So.
Awesome. And then last week we talked about the 90 is it power formations? Is that
third of the formation books. Man, that one's gone well. You know, we've had 3 of those now, and basically, if you're into how do I get to multiple formations, what do I do, what's the purpose of this, and you know, each of those books in that family is meant for that. Like, here's how to get in, here's verbiage to get into it, here's what you can look for when you run it, here's common things that we like to do out of it. And so if you're into, you know, kind of into, I want to run a bunch of formations, but I don't really know how to, or maybe I just like a lot of formations and I can maybe find 2 or 3 here that could help us. Those are good books. And those are all over at fbcoachsimpson.com. Also, plug for Daniel. He did another great article. He's been doing a bunch of them in headsets. That's over at fbcoachsimpson.com. Also, just go /headsets. You can pull up the 4 we've done this year and then the 3 years before. There's a ton in there. Daniel's doing a series. We got several guys have been writing a good series. They wrote their 4th article, and they're all pretty good.
I appreciate that. That's been I appreciate y'all giving me the opportunity, because I just feel like I'm just writing common sense stuff to me, but I also have that understanding. You know, it's not above me to understand that not everyone has the leadership training. So to be able to just go out and say, hey, here's some very simple leadership stuff. I hope somebody's taking something from it. More than anything, I just get to talk more football, so that's great. Before we move on, you know, I talked last week about the town of Sulphur, and how they were decimated by 1 or 2 tornadoes in the same night. I've never gotten the story completely straight, but regardless, you know, their city is essentially gone. It's been pretty flattened. And so what I've done is I've just gone out and I'm working with the people over at Coach Tube, CoachesTube, CoachTube.com, and we're going to put on a fundraiser clinic. Kenny's going to be a speaker. I'll probably do a little bit of speaking, but we're reaching out to some greats. And I don't want to put any names out there because we're still looking for confirmations. But, we're reaching out to a lot of connected universities to the state of Oklahoma, coaches that have been at those universities in the past, high school coaches. I don't want this to be, oh, great, I went to another collegiate clinic and got nothing I can use either. I know those names sell. But I want you to hear from Joe Daniels is going to be on there. So maybe you can take something from him. Adam Gaylor, he's a guy that's already said he would be welcome to do it. Ron Mackey Jr., he's going to come on to it. So there's a lot of guys that have a lot of high school knowledge, different schemes. I don't want a bunch of air raid guys. I want a mixture, right? And so that's what we're putting together. But it's really just a fundraiser for the town of Sulphur. So all that money is going to go straight to them. And so when it comes available, I'll have more information. We're still waiting. We're building a landing page. We're building this thing out. We're taking our time so we don't screw it up. I was very emotional when I put it together, and I was like, we're doing it this weekend. And I was like, that's not possible. So the dates right now look like it's going to be June 18th through the 21st. We'll do 4 or 5 clinics a night. That's after school's out, so we've all got a little more freedom in our evenings and our daytime. So expect around, in the next week or so, we'll start pushing that landing page if it's not already out. And then, please go buy a ticket, go learn something at the clinic, but more than anything, help us to help a community that's in dire need. They need help. And I think the coaches community being able to come together and do something good for one place for no other reason than they need it. Right. So we will greatly take your support, and we appreciate everything we end up getting. So that will be, I believe it's going to be sulphurstrong.coachesclinic.com or something to that effect. I'll get it all organized and we'll have it, and then we'll get it out on the Twitter and such. But moving on from that, guys, let's jump into our first question here. And, Zach, we like to let the guests speak first around here most of the time. So our first question here, talking about organization. So what is the most important thing to help you get organized for the season? So in your mind, what is it that gets you there most efficiently, or however you want to answer that?
Okay. So yeah, I'm kind of long-winded sometimes, so cut me off if you need to. But so what I see from my personal experience, being all the way from being an attorney, prepared for jury trials, and then from coaching, organization is just another way to say prepared. Preparedness. The problem is a lot of people, what they get wrong about being prepared is they don't focus on, okay, being prepared's awesome. It's excellent. It's necessary. But part 2, especially if you're trying to build support, is making sure you show that you're prepared. You have to make sure that others know from the outside that you're prepared. So I think some of the most important, and that's what a lot of coaches seem to they seem to stop at the first part and expect people to read their minds, but people can't read their minds, especially if you're a new head coach. They don't trust you. They didn't pick you. The parents didn't pick you. The community didn't pick you. Yes, the admin picked you, but you have to make sure that you're prepared, of course. But then you have to focus on ways to show that you're prepared, and that's something that you start. It starts in the interview process, and it continues all the way up through Friday nights. And there's little tricks you can do not tricks, but little extra things you can do to make sure others know that you're prepared. So make sure when you're organized, when you're prepared, make sure you're actually making intentional decisions to show your staff, show your players, show principal, athletic director, community, parents. Make sure you're making intentional steps to show them that you're actually prepared too.
Awesome. That's good. Really good points. That I like that you say organization is just another way of saying prepared, right? Like, because it truly is. In the military, we always use the quote, you either are failing to plan as planning to fail, right? Like you either did the work and you were going to be successful because of it, or you didn't, and you're going to watch yourself fail because of that. Just a lack of preparedness. I think that's awesome. Kenny, same question to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways. And like Coach said, I think it was a great point about not just knowing the plan, but making sure everyone else knows the plan. We would call that casting the vision. Like, what is the vision of where we want to go, and then what is the plan of how we're going to get there? And am I sharing that with my coaches? So we do that through a coach's manual. And again, I'm not trying to be a salesman here, but we have one of those. If you literally want to go pick mine on my website, it's like $5. And it's like 40 pages worth of 20 some odd years worth of passing this out and adjusting it each year and going through. But inside of that, and again, you don't have to get mine, just make your own. But you're going to have the roles of each coach. What is he expected to do? And I'm not just talking about like you're our running back coach. Like that's kind of obvious stuff. Like, what are their other roles? What are their other expectations you have of them? So we've got a page on there of all the coaches are expected to, be on time and not cuss the kids and all the things you shouldn't have to say, but you need to say, they're in there. And then we also have each coach. We try to match the coach with the skill they have. And I try to hire different personalities for that reason. Like, we have a young coach who's way better than me on social media and the Remind 101 and all that kind of stuff of communicating out to our parents what's going on. So he does that. We've got other coaches that are really good with technology. So, they're the ones that, hey, we're looking at getting one of those sideline replay systems. They're the one going to pick that. And they chose Sky Coach. And I said, man, if you trust them, I trust them. And, they're going to help pick this and they're going to help, but they're also responsible for doing that. And then I've got coaches that help me with fundraising and coaches that help me with, how many coaches do you have? How many jobs can you give them? But I think the big thing on there, the word I would use would be learning how to delegate correctly, like learning how to teach them what you expect and then allow them some freedom. And that's all listed in that coach's manual. And then the schedule. These guys, coach is a lawyer. I'm betting he's kind of busy. And so we may have guys on our staff that have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they have girls' soccer games to go watch, and they have their wife works a full-time job, and there's a lot of things that you don't know. What they all need to know is, here's when I expect you to be here, and here's when you are allowed to leave. If you want to hang around and talk ball, no one's kicking you out of the office, but our official meeting is done at X time. So if you got to go pick up your kids from practice or go do whatever, go. Like, don't think you got to hang around here and listen to us talk about Sunday's games that are on TV. So what's the expectation? Some people kind of get offended. We used to think, well, I was like, they're only working the minimum. Well, that's kind of what they should do. Like, the minimum should be what gets the job done. If they want to work above that, that's cool. But what is expected from you? Then deadlines. I think it's important you give yourself as a head coach deadlines of, I need to make sure I have all our officials by this date. So we've put together a few materials. And again, this is not meant to be an infomercial, but these are out there if you want them. We have a head coach workbook, which goes through basically from the hiring process all the way through the season. And then I came up with the idea of putting out a head coach daily planner. So basically, Monday we need to call the officials and we need to make sure our bus is scheduled. Tuesday, we're going to check grades. And Wednesday, we're going to check equipment for our travel game. And Thursday, stuff that you don't think about. And then if you don't think about it, you don't do it. And so we try to put that planner out. All that stuff's over at fbcoachsimpson.com, by the way, if you want to go look. But basically, if you don't want to use mine, that's cool. There are other coaches putting stuff out there, or you can make your own. But we just try to save you time. And then I think a big one is your communication plan. Coach mentioned it first answer. How are you sharing your vision? Well, you can't do it if you're not communicating to parents. And parents get information different ways, but none of the ways are through their kids. Like, you can't tell the kid and expect it to get home to the parent. It doesn't work that way. And so, like, you need to tell the kids, but you also need to have multiple ways that word is getting out to parents. And that could be Remind 101. That could be an email list. That could be a Facebook group for your parents. That could be whatever it is. And I would suggest a couple of them. Some way parents know where to go look. So when you have a rain out, like we could have tomorrow for spring practice, how's that word getting out to parents? When we have a fundraiser going on, how's that word getting out to parents? When on Sunday, we're putting out our week's schedule, How is that getting out to parents? And so, to me, like Coach mentioned it's not only important to have a vision, a plan, it's more important that it gets to the right people. And that's your coaches, your players, and of course, their parents.
That's awesome stuff, man. You said some stuff in there about time, and I know that's one of those things that's being a new coach, and there's the old school and the new school, and we're all colliding right now and trying to figure out which way this thing's going to go. But that, how much time are you supposed to spend at the office? And we had our first staff meeting today. I may have to sneeze. Nope, it's going to go away. That's great. We had our first staff meeting today, and one of the things my head coach said was like, "We're not going to be here just so our cars are parked out front of the field house."
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's so far beyond successful program. That's ridiculous, right? Uh, I don't think some people don't understand that point of diminishing returns. Like at some point, you're literally here for no reason. You don't need to watch 10 hours of film to figure out what this opponent needs to do. If you're trying to do that, you're doing too much, right? There's so many things. So Kenny, I appreciate you said that. Um, I think most important to help you get organized for the season, I think about limits. In military we call it left and right limits, right? Where's our lanes? And I think that's important to establish for every person, because and parents and players and coaches, because as you go through, life is just too, you don't know what's going to happen. Coach, you talked about a rain out. You talked about all the things that are going on this summer. What are we going to do when we get into the fall, right? So if people have limits of getting a job done, whatever it is, you talk about, somebody gets to, I believe Mr. Bo Gould got to bring back the Navy helmets this year, right? I assume it was his fingers. I saw the pictures. They're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But giving guys those type of tasks, they have,
Yeah.
but you're going to be more organized when people get to own stuff, make it their own, and then they're going to have the answer. So you're not constantly have to answer every single question. So giving those left and right limits and letting people kind of run wild within those limits. Here's my non-negotiables. As long as it fits in there, I don't care what you do. It needs to be it meets the standard, and then go have fun with it, right? And I think that works in the events too. Are you going to 7-on-7? You go into a tournament. You have a weekly camp you're going to. What are our limits there? Because that way my OC always kind of knows what to expect, or the DC or whatever. You just take a lot of that chaos out of the picture when you let people own things. And then when you get into the season, Kenny, you talked about schedules and how do we push out all this information. Well, look, guys, here's the left and right of what practice should look like this year. So at worst, maybe we run a little long, but I've already set that limit of practice might go until this time, right? And so maybe you try to beat that standard, but parents know, okay, this is officially practice time. At coaches meetings, you said the same thing, right? You said we're going to come in, we're going to do a certain amount of time, and you can go home. You want to sit here and talk ball or whatever you talk about, fine. But I've set the limit. I've set the left and right limits, and you guys know what is expected of you. So I think that's a great way to be prepared for the season, is to get people thinking on their own, let them own stuff. And that way, when the season hits, you don't have to answer every single question. I think that covers a lot of bases, though. But great answer there, Kenny, and Zach. Great one on yours as well. Moving on to second question here. What is the most difficult thing to be prepared for as a coach? And Kenny, we'll start with you on this one.
Oh boy, I get the hard one. Zach, get ready. I'm going to throw a couple. I think it's the situations that no one has taught you about, and no one can teach you about. I mean, Zach, you said it. You're a lawyer, so we're going to assume you're pretty smart. Probably a lot smarter than me and Daniel. No offense, Daniel, but he's probably gone through a lot more schooling than we have. Okay, but you probably never were taught in school. You may have a situation where, okay, your quarterback decides he's going to go to AAU tournament on Thursday and you got a game on Friday. How are you handling that? Or how are you going to handle when, your quarterback's dad, and I'll pick different positions. I'm not picking on poor quarterbacks, but so-and-so's dad's up in the bleachers just completely berating and got kicked out of the game because he showed up drunk. Now you got to deal with that kid who has a game. How are you handling that one? Or what about so-and-so who, his girlfriend broke up with him, so he's having suicidal thoughts. What about that? There was no game plan and no one gave you that. And there's no right or wrong answer on a lot of those. You get these gray area things. Or what about when you have a coach who's talking bad about you in the community, but you can't get rid of them from the admin, and you got to just figure something out, at least to get through the season. So there's these random situations that I don't care how many. And don't get me wrong, I want you to go buy all the books from my website you want to, but no book has it in there. Like it's not in there. There's not a game plan, and you feel like you're the only person on the planet dealing with this. That's the hardest stuff to be prepared for. And so you have to have not just something you put on a t-shirt, not just a slogan, but you have to have a mindset of how am I going to handle those? Mine has been pretty simple, and I'm not saying this just, to bang the drum for me. That's not it. But I've learned if you start off everything with what's best for the kids, meaning the team, then what's best for this specific kid next. So that's number 2. Finally, what's best for my coach is 3. And you kind of work with that. People might not like your response because sometimes what's good for someone doesn't mean it's fun for them. Like I'm not saying like give everybody ice cream. Like that's not good for anybody. So, but if you kind of go with that mindset, you'll at least sleep better at night when you have those really hard, and they're gonna be hard. Like kick a kid off the team who the only reason he comes to school is football. Get ready because those are situations where you know what's going to happen. So where's the line on that? I don't know where the line is on that. Like I wish that we didn't have to have a line on that. But what if he's selling drugs to other kids on your team? Well, there's probably the line. What if he's stealing from your locker room? Is that the line? Well, what if this kid, you're trying to help him, and and then you get into what if this kid's your best player too? So then you have that can be thrown on. So there's all these situations that no one knows, and we all in a vacuum can sit there and say things like, "I would get rid of the kid immediately." Really? I mean, that's what you're going to go with? Or you can, say, well, whatever you want to, or the worst part is then we want to cast stones at other coaches. We have no idea why they chose what they chose because some parent put something on Facebook that this coach left this kid on the team for selfish motives or whatever it might have been. So
Right.
you got all this.
You're never right in everyone's
You're never
eyes.
right. You're going to have a lot of never right questions come across your desk that you need to have at least an idea of how are you going to handle those. And there's not really a right way, but you need to, in your mind, kind of be ready for how am I going to handle this. And if you don't watch out, it can consume you because you can always think of the worst of the worst of the worst. You can play out scenarios that are never going to happen, and kind of drive yourself crazy. So to me, that's the hardest part.
Absolutely. Zach, how do you answer that same question, sir? The hardest part to be organized for?
So it pretty much goes along the same lines. So the biggest problems, it's not knowing who to ask for help. It's not knowing what even question to ask because sometimes you just don't know. But what coach said, so you have to have your, so I love that the 3-step like thing you went through, coach. You have to know your core values as any coach. A lot of people haven't sat down and actually, hey, these are my core values. But you got to know your core values. You have to make sure any decision you make kind of aligns with that core value. If that happens, then you're going to be okay. Yeah, I mean, you may get worst case scenario, you may get fired. I know that's terrible, but you have to make sure you have your beliefs and your actions align with those beliefs. Now, the funny thing is about this question, it's literally why people oftentimes pay attorneys. A lot of people hire us for that reason alone, to prepare for the unknown, the unexpected. And I'll tell you how I do it from the attorney side of things. One, you just as a head coach, you know how you'll prepare as offensive coordinator. Well, if this happens, then I'll do this. So you'll always be preparing those type of stuff. But usually when something happens that I have no idea what to do, I reach out to, I have a couple different resources just as head coaches can reach out to other head coaches where I literally put the question out to more knowledgeable people. And, hey, this is what happened, what I do. The issues is, from that perspective, though, is just as with the head coaching position, well, what about if it happens during a game on Friday night? Or what about if it happens like in the middle of a jury trial? So that's the kind of stuff that you're never going to be prepared for. But if you're clear on your own values, core values, then I am a firm believer that you're going to make a decision that you can live with. Um, you may regret it. I think that's human nature to regret decisions, but um, yeah. So I guess my main answer there, I mean, the main answer there would make sure if you haven't sat down and know your core values, do it. Mine's family, service, fun, and just make sure you are clear, confident about those core values. Make sure that your personality or whatever, everything exudes that. So when those situations happen that you can't prepare for, you can at least fall back on being genuine to yourself. I know that's a cliche now that I say it out loud, but um, yeah, it's hard to prepare for those moments. So
Absolutely. Well, I think the hardest thing to prepare for is 4th and 3 with the game on the line, and you're on your own 20.
That's a huge
I'm just kidding.
thing. Yep.
um, no, yeah, honestly, I mean, y'all nailed that one. There's not anything to add. That's what it is. It's team above all, and doing what's best for them. I will just add a way to resolve that to go along with what y'all said. Number one, have your philosophy, have your core value, your pillars, whatever you want to call it. What does this team? What are we built on? Yes, have that, because like I love what you just said, Zach, and that is you can make a decision you can live with, even if it goes bad. I had a thing, and maybe I need to address that thing. I need to address how I filtered that, but that was what I believed to be the best decision at the time. It's kind of, if you can justify it to yourself, which is all you really have to do. At the end, no matter what the other people say, if you can go to bed with a clear conscience in the night, you probably made the right choice. I'd say also build a team. Coach, you just said, you send out the question into the ether, and smarter minds send back their answer of how they would do it. Build a team that has the same morals, the same moral compass, the same philosophy as you have. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, right? It doesn't have to be the same verbiage, but I know, being to be honest, just to be, I'm a Christian, right? I'm a man that does believe in God, and I know that Kenny Simpson does too. So if I have a true moral question, I can send him something, and he's going to send me back an answer that I can take to the bank, right? Um, Joe's the same way. Coach Bo Collins is the same way. Tyrell Shelley. These are guys that are in my circle that I have no problem reaching out with any question, because I know it's going to come back to me in varying ways. They're each going to have their own spin on how they would do a thing, but none of them are going to steer me in the wrong direction. And so I think building that team, it's the old adage, like it takes a village to raise a child or whatever. Absolutely takes a village to run a team, right? You better have multiple people in your corner, but it can't be. I heard one the other day. It's like, if you hang out with 5 millionaires, you'll be the sixth. If you hang out with 5 bachelor degrees, you'll be the sixth. If you hang out with whatever, you are the company you keep. And so that better be, when you build your team, you better make sure you don't have the cancers in there, right? Because that ain't what you want to deal with. You don't want that giving you the wrong answer. So build that team, and then you're ready for anything. Last question here, and in no hurry, so we'll fill this one out. But how do you delegate responsibilities? Zach, we'll start with you, man. Second year head coach here, so how are you delegating? And I hope that you are.
So yeah, the funny thing is, I just heard the other day it was a college coach. I can't remember who it was, but control is for amateurs. You guys might have heard that, but it
No,
makes
but
so
that's a
much
good one.
sense. The biggest problem, and this is going from me from last year, and I've reached out to many other coaches too in their first year. The problem with delegation in that first year is you're also trying to prove yourself. So you're also trying to look competent. And what many people do to try to look competent is they try to do everything themselves. Put their energy into stuff there's no need to put your energy into. And just being an assistant coach before, there is nothing worse, at least I can think of as an assistant coach, after, if there's a bad practice or you lose a game, and to feel helpless. Like there's nothing you can do to prevent that from happening. So just a key thing with delegation is early on you really have to start it, as coach said in his coach's manual. You got to start it even during the hiring process, picking your staff. You have to set out You have to set out your expectations. Hey, this is what I expect. This is your specific role that I see you doing. And then you have to lay out, hey, this is how I'm going to help you succeed in that role. So this is what I'm going to give you. This is what I'm going to do, so you can get your job done. So start that in the or when you're picking your staff, and then make sure once you actually find your staff. And I do have some funny stories too about trying to pick my staff, but anyways, once you do that, just make sure that one, everybody knows each other's roles. So if you want to have just a Google Sheets or different things, just make sure everybody knows each other's roles, and make sure everybody um, has a job to do. And it's simply like Friday night or Saturday after a game, give your position groups, your position coaches, hey, this is just to make it easier on you. This is a template. I want you to pick out the 5 best plays from your position group that we can use in film. Pick out the 5 worst plays and a brief description why. One, it helps you, but two, it helps them feel more part of the team, which is huge. If you're trying to create a team culture, you have to give them jobs to do. And at the end of the day, too, your assistant coaches, they want to help you. They're giving up 4 to 5 hours of their day during the season, to create a program to help you as much as they can. So if you're not actually giving them stuff to do, you're which again, like I did not do a great job in my first year on that. So just make sure you're giving them stuff to do, and it's just going to create a better program altogether. So
Awesome. Kenny, I'm going to go second here because I feel like you are the godfather of delegating, and I've learned most of my. And plus, I got to steal your thunder. If I let you say it, I'll have nothing to add. So,
Got it.
number one, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, and that is the limits. Set left and right limits. Let people know their lane. As long as you don't cross outside these limits, I'm never going to be upset with you. This is the only standard, the non-negotiables. Everything else, I'm giving you that ownership. So that's number one. Two, and I'm stealing all this directly from Kenny to make him think of new stuff for his next book. You need to compare what people want to do to what you need done, right? So if a coach is good at something and they want to do that within your program, let them do it. If that's graphic design, if that's making the jerseys next year, pairing where they're wanting to go. I put something out on Twitter about this the other day, right? And I got back, well, coach, we don't, it's hard for us to find a staff of any assistant coach that wants to do anything else. Like, fire them. What are you talking about? And I realize that can't be the answer. If the talent pool's that low, reach out, though. I legitimately have guys right now that can't find jobs that would be great assets to your team if you need people to take over building the damn practice schedule every day, right? It From a guy who, since my first day on the field, I was already wanting more. Give me more. I'm blown away by the fact that some people just don't. But I also understand there's head coaches that aren't head coaches anymore that don't want the head coaching responsibility. They don't want those menial tasks. They're there to coach linebackers or O-line or whatever they're doing, right? So I also get that there's people are in different places in their career. You may have my head coach my first year essentially had 3 coaches that none of us had the talent to go do anything extra, right? Whether it was lack of want, I just didn't have the knowledge yet. Another gentleman was just well on in age and ready to basically retire. He was just there kind of as a last hurrah. We didn't offer him any assets, so he needed more assistance. But so figuring out what your coaches want to do, and then pairing them with the task that you need done. Like how much are they actually willing to put on their plate, and then giving them attached something they enjoy doing. And I love what Kenny always says is like, with every good task comes some crappy one because someone still has to do laundry on Saturday night, right? Or on Friday night or Saturday morning. Someone still has to break down huddle. There's all these things that still have to be done, regardless if you get to design the uniform or not. So tie something fun with something less fun and let them go to work. Um, I also look at kind of how do you do the delegation? Small teams. There's a military concept out there somewhere that says like 10 people is the most that you should be in charge of. So if you've got a wide receivers coach and your wide receiver core is 28 kids, he's overwhelmed. You've got to divide that better so that he can actually be delegated a responsibility and get it done, because he needs to be passing on tasks to his leaders within the players, right? He needs to build that same next echelon. I wouldn't say the same one, but that next lower echelon of student leaders. So making sure that your sizes make sense. If you're trying to coach 45 kids and your admin's not giving you enough coaches, you're in a bad spot, and that's a conversation you need to be having. Maybe you need to be thinking about moving on. Regardless of how successful you are, you got to put yourself and your coaches in the best place to be successful. So, I think that's kind of we lose sometimes we talk about delegation. It's all the big, quotes or whatever, but the how to is really just build smaller teams, let people be in actual control. Control for amateurs is pretty funny because I go to like chaos is real and like chaos is the standard, right? So that's pretty funny to hear you say it that way, Coach. But I think you just got to break it down and let people be in control of a small enough element they can actually be in control and not be overwhelmed. All right, Kenny, what are you putting out in your next book then?
Oh, no, I don't know about all that. No, I thought Coach did a good job mentioning it. You did too, Daniel. But he talked about number one. I think on the front end, if you're good enough and you're listening to this and you have the ability to hire people, I think on the front end you need to think about a couple things when you're hiring. Number one, you need to be diverse in who you bring in. And I'm not just talking about like ethnically diverse, although that is important too. But you need to hire coaches that have different skill sets. And I'm not just talking about like line or receiver or quarter. I'm talking about like we got this guy that's super outgoing. We have this guy who's super analytical. We have this guy who's super disciplined. We have this guy who's able to reach kids that I could never reach. We want to be extremely intentional to hire a bunch of guys that don't think and look and act like me. You already have me. We need guys that are different than me. And a lot of times as a head coach, that those are perceived as threats. And you got to get past that. Like sometimes it's tough, especially if you're a young head coach, to walk in a room and be challenged. And a lot of times that can be difficult. And there are times that's inappropriate. There are times where guys don't need to be challenged on certain things. But there are also times where guys can bring a lot to the table if you're willing to hire diverse people that aren't yes men or clones of you. Because what if a kid doesn't like you? Well, now they're screwed because everyone's just like it. Second thing is I think you need to hire people over scheme. Like when I interview people, I'm going to be honest. I don't really care how much football they know. I really don't. Like if you could give me some lady who hadn't even seen a football, if she's a really good person and a hard worker, she's going to make a great coach, or he's going to make a great coach, or whoever's going to make a great coach. If they're a great person who's got great moral character, a great work ethic, understands what you're trying to accomplish, shares your vision, they can learn to coach the D line or the receivers or whoever because they're going to put the time in to do so. So a lot of times that's how I hire people and how I'd recommend you hire people if you want to have good people around you. I might have 5 O-line coaches on my staff because those were the best 5 candidates, and we're going to teach one of them big boys how to coach quarterbacks. That's just part of it. My first job was coaching the D-line at 143 pounds out of college. I learned because that's what I wanted to do. Okay. Second thing I think you need to figure out, like, here's just a sampling of the jobs a head coach has to do. So if you're talking about delegating, you're in charge of all of this stuff. So here's just a quick sample. I just wrote these down as y'all were talking. Fundraising, organizational things like practice schedules. Daniel, you mentioned that. Facilities and facility management, uniforms, gear, like gear you're handing out to the kids, gear you're handing out to the coaches, weight room, communicating to parents, communicating to admin, scheme, grades, youth football, JV football, film uploading, highlight film, social media, graphics. So that's about 20 roughly that I just wrote down real quickly, and I'm sure I missed some. Those are the things that you're in charge of as a head coach. If you don't delegate, a lot of that's not going to get done. So you need to figure out, like Daniel said, first of all, can I pick a coach who wants to do it? Because that's the best option. Coach that wants to do it, great. But I'll tell you the problem with guys like Daniel is at times as a head coach, you're going to abuse Daniel because I know he would do too much and I'm going to have some lazy dude on my staff who's doing nothing. And so you got to be careful with guys like Daniel that you don't make them resent you by giving them every job because you know they're going to get it done. And they look over here and Jim Bob's drinking his coffee with his feet up. So to me, we try to balance that. You want to make sure that you give jobs to everybody. You want them to be in their world of thought, but then you basically divide and conquer on the jobs nobody wants. Divide and conquer on that. Um, then and that's the jobs you have to get. That's how you hire. Then the next thing you got to do is, how do you actually teach them? Like, how do you teach them? Daniel did a good job kind of talking about, essentially, give them kind of a roadmap. Stay here, but I think you have to teach and you have to model what you want. And like Coach mentioned, Zach mentioned right at the bat, that means the first year you probably can't delegate as much. You guys have two young children. My kids are in their teens. It's easier for me to go out and cut the grass correctly than to teach my son how to do it. That makes sense. Like, it's way easier for me to go do it than it is to teach him. However,
Yeah.
3 months from now, it's going to be better for our family if I teach him how to do it right. And it's better for him if I teach him how to do it right. So as a first year head coach, that's really hard because it takes more time to delegate correctly on the front end. And so that can be really tough and overwhelming for a first year head coach, because it actually is more work for you if you do it right. Because you have to also think about this. If they don't do whatever job you gave them well, no one's firing the assistant. They're firing you. Like, you're the one that's going to get fired if it doesn't go well. So don't just delegate thinking, well, I told him to handle it. That ain't it. You got to teach them what you expect, how you expect it to get done, and give them freedom. But what are your expectations, and how do they need to do it? Not just figure it out. Like, that isn't it. The last thing I would say is this: you also have to figure out, like, what's going to affect wins or culture. Like, what are the most important aspects of your program, and either you need to do those or your most trusted guys need to do those. So, like, Daniel comes on my staff. We're probably going to trust him with some of that. I've got some guys I've coached with for a long time now that we've been through it. I'm going to trust them with some of that stuff. But when I first came in, I handled the weight room. I thought that needed to be done right. I handled the scheme. I was the most experienced coach on the staff. I handled communicating with parents and fundraising. As time has gone on and coaches have proven they're ready for it, all of those things I've delegated off. Like, I have other coaches that handle those. We meet and we talk, but they handle the majority of that stuff. And so you need to think about, like, what's most important, and it either needs to be you or it needs to be somebody you trust the most. So that'd be my suggestions on delegation.
Awesome. That's all great stuff, Coach, man. I appreciate it. I told you could write another book. Come on now. That kind of brings us to the end of the main questions there. Organization is one of those things that's really hard because, Coach, you said it when we got started here. You don't know what you don't know, right? And as you step off in that pool, you got to go 2 feet in, right? There's no dipping your toe in head coaching. You either have the job or you don't. And everything, if you slack off and are bad at your job, you've wasted all those kids at least 1 year of eligibility to be able to play high school ball. That might mean college scholarships for some. So your inabilities or your lack of preparedness or lack of organization may have cost other families money because you failed to do your job. So it is something I think it's easily overlooked, unfortunately, but we definitely should have put priority into it because of the magnitude of the decisions you're going to be making. Coach Simpson, we'll kind of jump in the last part here, what not to do as a coach. Can you tell us what our lesson is for the night?
Yeah, we might have even had this before, because I feel like we've talked about organization a lot because it's an important topic. But today's lesson is try not to do it yourself. As a head coach, try not to do it yourself. Try to figure out ways to delegate. We just mentioned that here at the end. Zach mentioned having a team of people you can reach out to. But I'll tell you right now, if you are not a head coach yet and you want to be a head coach, I know, Daniel, that's in your future plans pretty quickly. Let me go ahead and tell you, and Zach probably learned, it's a very lonely job. Like, you walk in and it gets quiet. People don't whine about the assistants on social media. They call you out. Your assistants go into meetings with the admin. When something goes wrong, that's you. You carry the burden of a lot more people than you think you do. And there are a lot less people that you can trust to say things to in that role. So it's tough, but you need to find people you can delegate that are underneath you. And then you need to find people that you can work with that are either outside of the situation or that you can trust to kind of share that burden, because it can be a very, very, very lonely place to be. And I say that a lot. It's extremely lonely when you're not winning. So kind of get ready if that's just the chair you want to sit in. People say winning takes care of all ills. They didn't just make that up. Like winning doesn't make everything right, but my goodness, it's a whole lot better than the other side.
Right. Zach's eyes opened up when you said that. So seems like he may have went through some of that. Coach, we're gonna start closing out here and cover our sponsors one more time. Before we do, man, I just want to tell you I greatly appreciate you reaching out and coming on the show. We love having guests. This podcast is it's a lot of fun to do. Kenny and I are very like-minded, and I've learned a ton from him, and he kind of has some of those more old school ideas, and I get to bring that youth, but it's still a ton of fun to just have somebody else come in and inject what they do, because eventually it's just him and I talking to each other, and we want that outside presence. So once again, man, thank you so very much for reaching out and being able to come on to the show and just helping us have another voice. There are going to be guys listening to this. They're going to learn something from you just like they would of us. So I'm glad you gave us that opportunity to share that message.
I really appreciate it. And the funny thing is, every coach you talk to, I learned so much in this conversation we had today. So, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, there you go. Real quick, we'll mention our sponsors before we close out. Ace Sports, go call Mark or Ryan. Mark, I think his information is in that ad. If you need to rewind back and go to that ad, you can look up Mark. Procom, if you need anything, headsets, the loudmouth is their patented thing where you can scream at your quarterback from the box if you're the OC, right? So reach out to Zach Welchman for that over at procomwelchman.com. As we get out of here, Kenny already talked about his book that he's got coming out. So if you're looking for the next book in the series, which I'm a big owning all the series, so I got to get that book. But he's got the 90 power formations. Is that 90 power formations, right, Coach?
Power shotgun, yeah.
Power shotgun. So there you go. So 90 power shotgun formations. I just want to mention I have now opened my own Patreon. I've been looking for ways to connect with coaches, and I've said it on here before. I'm not teaching next year, which means I've got to find a way to replace like $35,000 to $40,000 in income, and so I want to give back to coaches. And this is a chance for you guys to kind of help me do that for you, kind of a help me help you situation. So you can go over to patreon.com and look up Chamberlain Football Consulting. It's just got a few tiers in there right now. The one that's the coolest is the Marco Polo app. If you've never used Marco Polo, it's like the adult version of Snapchat, but everything's recorded. It stays there, so there's no weird gimmicky. I want to try to hide creepy stuff because I think Snapchat's the devil. But you can. It'll just be a community of people that are in that tier and myself, and I'm literally at your fingertips. So you click the button, record a message, and it's a face message, right? And you're talking. And you ask a question, or you make a comment, and we just have a conversation. So literally injecting you into my social circle. I think that's going to be a great way to network with guys, great way to build up more of a network than what I already have. And I can help problem solve, whatever your problems are. This whole thing's about organization, so maybe it's an organization idea, whatever. I stole the idea from a archery hunting podcast that I listened to, and I became part of their social circle. And it was a lot of fun for a guy learning how to be an archer. And so I thought, man, let's do that with football. So, so jump over to the patreon.com and look up Coach Chamberlain Football Consulting, and you'll be able to find me there and sign up today. Social media. Zach, where can we find you at on social media? If somebody wants to reach out and maybe they have a problem they need an attorney for, or, maybe they just want to talk ball.
Yeah, you can just go to coacheshelpcoaches.com, and you can click on my social handle there. That's easier than me telling you the specific Twitter handle.
That's fine.
Yeah. I'm
coacheshelpcoaches.com, right?
Coacheshelpcoaches.com. Yep. And then I'm awesome. Coach Zach Baber. So
great. I am on Twitter and X at Coach Chambo. You can also email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. And the very quickly coming around is chamberlainfootballconsulting.com. So I have my own website to kind of host the podcast, or not host them, but add them on there. Great place to find everything about me. That Patreon will be on there as well. Kenny, where can we find you, sir?
All things FB Coach Simpson. So at FB Coach Simpson on Twitter, FBCoachSimpson.com, and then FBCoachSimpson@gmail.com.
Awesome. The podcast is at Coaching 101 Pod on Twitter /X. Jump over there and join the discussion today. We're always asking questions now. That's kind of how we tie our podcast in because we want to know your thoughts on the topic we're putting out. I want to thank you for being a listener to the Coaching 101 podcast. We hope you'll join us next week as we continue to make the complex more simple. Please consider subscribing to the show so you'll always know when the new episodes are out. We'll leave you with this. It's hard to beat someone who never gives up. No matter the situation, find a way.